Founded in Panama in 1946, the School of the Americas trained American soldiers in jungle warfare and counterinsurgency tactics so they could more effectively protect and expand U.S. political, economic, and strategic interest in Latin America. The goal of post-World War II U.S. foreign policy was expressed by George Kennan, who said, quote, "We, the United States, represent only 6.3% of the world's population, but we control 50 to 60% of the world's resources." Our responsibility in this new era must be to maintain the disparity, unquote. Part of this responsibility was assigned to the Latin American military and police. In the 1950s, the School of the Americas was transformed into a training center for Latin Americans, with all courses conducted in Spanish. Then came the Cuban Revolution of 1959. An alarmed Kennedy administration responded by mandating the SOA to play a leading role in suppressing Cuban-inspired wars of national liberation in the Western Hemisphere.
Internal security, it means war against the population. The internal security doctrine meant that the mass of the population must be disciplined, depoliticized, marginalized, and suppressed in the interests of elite groups.
As the SOA carried out its counterinsurgency or anti-guerrilla campaign, Latin Americans began calling it the School of Coups, the School of Assassins, and the School for Dictators. But Panamanian resistance to the School of the Americas grew over the years. And in 1984, the U.S. Army moved the school to Fort Benning, Georgia. There are over 100 other facilities in the United States which train Latin American military personnel. But the SOA is the flagship school. The Pentagon extols it as a centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy. The school's operating budget has never been publicly disclosed, but it is estimated to be between $20 and $30 million annually. All funds come from the U.S. government.
They say they do it for democracy, to fight communism, to stop terrorism, to secure American lives, or to defend American interests. Now, when they say defending American interests, they're getting a little closer to the truth. But whose American interests? Not the interests of me or you or the taxpayer. It's the interests of large corporate investors.
Father Roy Bourgeois has led the growing movement to shut down the School of the Americas. Ordained a Marinol Catholic priest in 1972, he was assigned to a mission in La Paz, Bolivia, where he lived for 5 years, until he was arrested and tortured for his defense of the poor and forced to leave the country. Father Roy and many other U.S. citizens began to organize against the School of the Americas following a massacre that made the front page of newspapers around the world. On November 16, 1989, at the University of Central America in El Salvador, 6 Jesuit priests, their co-worker and her 15-year-old daughter were brutally murdered. 26 soldiers responsible, 19 had been trained at the School of the Americas. Of the SOA's 60,000 graduates, over 600 are documented human rights violators. At least 12 became dictators, such as Manuel Noriega of Panama. During the covert U.S. war against Nicaragua in the 1980s, over 5,000 Contras, whom President Reagan called freedom fighters, were trained at the School of the Americas. Consequently, the U.S. was condemned by the International Court of Justice for the crime of international terrorism. Over 10,000 Colombian soldiers and police officers have attended the School of the Americas.
You talk about the studies, and it shows the
indication that there were people who did go through the School of the Americas who were involved in some atrocities. We don't have any problem, with that study. We don't deny that study. But they were not trained at the School of Americas to do those acts. Period. We've been informed that the Operation Condor, an alliance of death squads in Paraguay, Chile, Argentina, and Brazil at least. The internationalization of the death squad principle, called Operation Condor, was run through an American switchboard in Panama, which means, among other things, that everything they said and did was known about in Washington.
They use electricity in your body, mostly your genitals. They use a technique that was created by the Argentinians. It's called el potro, where they tie you in the back and they hang you there. And when they hit you, you feel it.
Who's the enemy? They're the poor. They are who they've always been. Where's the enemy located? Outside of the borders of their countries? No. They're within their borders. They are the poor who threaten the army, who threaten that socioeconomic system there, who call for reform, just wages, adequate housing, schools, hospitals.
La mano que manejaba y maneja el peligrosímetro sabía muy bien que peligrosos son los que piensan, los que dudan, los que dicen no.